UFC 2025 wrapped up this past December with the Cup and Royal card, but this year also marked the end of an era before the new broadcast deal kicks in. You never know, but depending on the new partner's vision, the UFC could transform into something entirely different. Plus, that planned White House card might just push the UFC we've grown used to into unrecognizable territory. We might start seeing interim title fights everywhere we look. Before we head into this new phase, I wanted to put together a series of farewell videos for 2025. The first one will focus on the submissions, but before we dive in, let me remind you of a few things. First off, these aren't your typical ranking videos. The goal here is to look back at the submissions of 2025, remember what went down, and talk about what it means for the future. Just a heads up, these clips are strictly from the main cards, which was key for the point I'm making. One more thing before we jump into the recap. If there's a specific submission you're looking for that's missing or just brushed over, it might be featured in another video. I'd highly recommend waiting for my UFC 2025 Bizarre Moments video for those. To make sure you don't miss any of this series, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into it. At UFC 321, Mackenzie Dern defeated Virna Jandiroba via unanimous decision, crowning herself as the new queen of the women's strawweight division. For Dern, reaching title contention didn't just happen because Weili vacated the belt to move up against Valentina. She solidified her dominance at the top of the division by submitting Amanda Ribas on the opening card of the year. Being the elite BJJ specialist she is, she knew exactly how to stay active off her back in both the title fight and this matchup, constantly creating openings and hunting for positions. As for what happened next, well, you know the story. For our second critical submission play, we have Moicano, who suddenly found himself facing a titan after Arman pulled out.
Don't come up with guys that are tough.
The significance of this finish for me was this. If Islam Makhachev had finished Arman here, he would have never dropped in the pound-for-pound rankings. Instead, this submission was viewed as a low-value win. Consequently, by vacating the belt, he temporarily handed over the throne to Ilya. The third standout submission came from Bahamondes. Using that same Dern-style fluidity on the ground, Bahamondes found the submission against Jalen Turner, a man who seemed uncertain about his future after a brief 6-month retirement. But while this sub made him shine, it set him on a collision course with a declining physio in Baku, where Bahamondes ultimately bounced back down the rankings. Another name that experienced that flicker of glory before fading out was John Silva. His brutal finish over Mitchell basically laid the groundwork for the night he'd receive the beating of his life at the hands of Lopez. Then we have Merab, who was having a whirlwind of a year until he was finally halted by Yan. At UFC 316, Merab used a rare submission to shut down the claims of Haniwold O'Malley, proving that all the talk of improvement didn't quite hold up under pressure. Kayla Harrison, who is being touted as a candidate for the female GOAT, cruised right through the Pena hurdle. Now she is set a date for the next year with the long inactive Amanda Nunes. We'll have to wait and see. Will her hype train come to a halt, or are we witnessing the birth of a new pound-for-pound number one? Then there's Kevin Holland, who in my opinion was easily the most entertaining fighter of the year. Out of nowhere he catches Luke in an anaconda choke. The guy is the definition of all or nothing, and he will probably keep pulling off these weird stunts next year too, provided he stays at 170 of course. While Pantoja was dominating Kai Kara-France at UFC 317, we might have witnessed the very last rear naked choke of his career. How he'll bounce back from injury is already shaping up to be one of the biggest questions of 2026. Do you think he'll still be hunting for those subs when he returns, or was that truly his final curtain call? Then we have Park, who, much like Moicano's sudden situation, found himself thrown in against Tyra, the guy everyone thought would have stopped Pantoja a few years back. Park got choked out way too easily, failing to shift the landscape of the division like Joshua Wan did. For now, he seems nowhere near making that kind of impact. Our next up is a fight where we saw the absolute psychopath Hernandez isn't only a serious middleweight contender but also has some serial mental screws loose. He handed Roman Dolidze one of the most humiliating moments in UFC history. Then there's Kaya Sakura, who was brought in from another organization specifically to take down Pantoja, only to be submitted by yet another veteran of the division. With that, the UFC's big plans for Japan were temporarily derailed by Team Elite. Another plan went up in flames in Paris. Saint-Denis, who once fell short against Poirier, was thrown to the Rising Monster trophy, but Saint-Denis' ground game exposed to the Rising Monster's weakness. Still, because he's a privileged fighter, we'll see him against Fiziev soon. Let's see if Rafael Fiziev will give him the same Bahamondes treatment. At UFC 320, Yusuf Salal does something to Emmett. Honestly, looking back at that position, it felt like he had Emmett trapped in some sort of medieval torture device. If anyone actually knows the name of that submission, drop it in the comments. Then in Rio, after Fiziev pulled out, Charles Oliveira stepped into the cage without Gumroad to remind everyone exactly where he stands. After being practically humiliated by Ilya and previously falling to Arman, Oliveira might not be able to hang at the very top anymore, but he's still showing no mercy to those trying to climb up the ranks. Finally, I am adding 2 more submissions here. While these 2 aren't exactly mind-blowing on their own, the way they set them up really sets them apart from the rest. Both of these finishes were set up through the striking. In the first one, Joe Pyfer, unable to take Magomedov down with wrestling, drops him with a punch instead. In the second, Charles Jourdain does it even more stylishly, using his knees to force his opponents to the mat. We are wrapping up today's video with finishes that transitioned perfectly from striking to the ground. Our next recap will focus on a general look at the UFC through the lens of the best knockouts of the year. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. Wishing you all peaceful days free of any real fights.